and what most wrestling fans watched was the Hulk Hogan Real American documentary. So, as always with these documentaries, you know, there's not enough time for everything. Things are going to be avoided. Things are not going to be talked about. And this is essentially with everything. You know, the popular movie out right now is the Michael Jackson movie, and everybody's saying, oh, well, they left this out, they left this out. You can't put everything into any of these things, or these things will be, movies will be 4 or 5 hours long. These documentaries will be 10 parts long, but they didn't get into everything. So from what we did get, I enjoyed the documentary a lot. I really thought it was good. I have not seen every single Hogan documentary. So his early stage and childhood and upbringing, that was in his early relationship with Linda, I thought was actually really good and really informative. I thought of course, they glanced over things, but I thought it was good because I get to see the growth of Hulk Hogan. And being born in 1991, I was not born during the peak of Hulkamania. I was more around for the Hollywood Hogan era, but it was actually good to see it in where he actually got where his popularity was, and how the popularity began to peak down. So I really did enjoy it. One of my favorite things about this was specifically everybody's favorite happy person, Bret Hart, didn't hold back. A lot of people didn't. Some people who despise Hogan didn't hold back. But one of my highlights of the documentary was when Hogan left and then saw Bret win the title. When Hogan saw Bret win the title, Hogan was
no, brother, doesn't work for me.
It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me, brother. So he comes back. He comes back immediately. Comes up with this ridiculous plan to Vince about him getting the title back. If the internet was around back then, we would have destroyed this. It would have been one of the biggest, it would have been one of the biggest stories, one of the biggest talked about events in wrestling history in today's modern day. But really good documentary. It did hit on some of the peaks and lows during that era, especially during the NWO era. It hit on the lows when he tried to run for president and things like that. The steroid trial where he basically lied on Arsenio Hall. And everybody's like, well, why would you do that? You know, why would you do that at all? And also the things we know about him coming back as the red and yellow Hogan early on in his WCW run, and then he wanted to make that change. So they did touch on a lot of things as well. One of the things like it's talked about was the low part in the late 90s of his Hollywood Hogan run that they talked about that is usually glossed over. They touched on the Bash at the Beach, my 2000 scandal, one of my favorite car crashes, dumpster fires in life. If I'm ever down, I watch that at all times. And then it also touched on what kind of got me as a Hulkamaniac was his return in 2002. They covered the match with The Rock and how electrifying that match was. And in the post after that, Triple H basically said that Vince was in love with Hogan after that. And it pretty much became, and Hunter was like, no, Hunter and everybody was like, no, this is just a nostalgia pop. And one of my favorite moments in wrestling, I've talked about on this show a bunch of times, is when Hogan does come out on Triple H on that episode of SmackDown with the red and yellow for the first time in his return. So I did really enjoy watching that. It brought back goosebumps. It's resurfaced even on Instagram, my Instagram feed. I've seen it a few times this week with the correct audio of Voodoo Child, because we all know I love Voodoo Child. And I enjoyed it. And then it touches on 2003 for a second, but it does not talk about the Mr. America part of his career that was short-lived. Doesn't talk about that. It jumps to Hogan Knows Best in the reality show that he had with his family. And also they got to the Gawker stuff and talked about and also they went over his run in TNA. And one of the things they talked about also was the fact that when you're a character for so long, you start to believe you are that character. And he didn't know who Terry Bollea was anymore. He was always Hulk Hogan. And watching this documentary, I didn't. It's pretty obvious what they don't talk about. And the person that don't talk about at all, sparingly, is Brooke Hogan, his daughter. Brooke Hogan. One thing I did love was the home videos that were shot. that's where you saw Brooke for the most part. You saw her in the home video shots. You saw her in the Hogan Knows Best clips, but that's about it. There's no testimonial for Brooke Hogan or anything like that, or even her TNA run or her music career. And Brooke Hogan, she has recently popped up on the media circuit about the documentary, discussing why she's not in it. She's also discussing why she was not in his will. Me and Angel, we've been watching Rock My Block, and Brooke Hogan is a contestant on Rock My Block. When I first saw her, I was saying to myself, like, what does she do at houses? And I told Angel that was Hulk Hogan's daughter, and she said, really? Like, she must be loaded. I'm like, no, she took herself out the will. It's a little bit of a long story, but she is topical at this moment in time. So Brooke Hogan, she did do an interview where she discussed where she was not involved in a documentary and some things that were missed. So we're going to sit down and react to what Brooke Hogan has to say. Fair use.
A better term, magic or hope or something that I held onto, thinking, you know, I asked to be taken out of the will and my dad did it. You know, I think I imagined that there would be some sort of why, or, hey, you're the only person I trust. Like, let's talk about it. But we had already talked about it. I mean, I was, again, looking through my text messages at things that I was texting him saying, and it's funny because in the text messages, I'm listing what he said to me about the people around him. And I'm like, you've told me this, 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 and this, Dad. I'm only watching out for you. And when I was pigeonholed, is what it felt like, and had to make this decision that I felt I had to at the time, I was so upset. And it was even more upsetting to see how quickly you could be erased and how much it was like, okay, cool, F you then. And it was almost like a tit for tat thing. And even when we were talking, there were tit for tat things. Like, I'd be like, Dad, you know, in one of my texts, I said, Dad, you know, Heather was a choice. Christiane was a choice. Like, you can make a new choice. Like, let's try to take this last part of your life and really do it right. You know, like, I'm here, like, me and Steve moved down here, let's do it. And it was like, well, I haven't been proud of your choices either. And I'm like,
it's not tit for tat though.
I'm sorry, but I haven't done
anything.
Drugs, and I haven't effed your best friend. And what did I do wrong? I dated and decided when a guy was not right for me, I did the right thing and left, like, and ended up with a good guy. What did I do? You know?
All right. So what Brooke's essentially saying here is, oftentimes when somebody is trying to communicate with you, we're communicating with somebody and they're telling you the right things, they don't want the person that knows everything involved in documentaries like this. They just don't, because Brooke knows a little too much. She might divulge too much. She doesn't, or that information doesn't want to be out there, guys.
So, and then it's just like, to watch, I said this before, I was like, to watch people switch up is just so crazy to me. Like, it's just so unbelievably mind-boggling crazy to me, because there are things that Nick has said to me that I said, Nick, that is not the right way to be thinking. Like, that's not, like, that's what Linda put in your mind. That's not the right, you know. And it was just a very, there were just a ton of people with not good, it was like opportunists, I guess.
I think the people that we're talking about had a lot of influence on this documentary, almost may have wrote it, and they wrote you out. They completely wrote you out and your significance as being, you know, his favorite child and Brooke Teeny.
If that was the case, I couldn't feel less like my father's daughter now. As sad as that is to say, I feel so not.
All right, so that was Brooke
loved at all.
I felt the same. I told you that privately. I felt the same way.
All right, so that was Brooke on the documentary, and for you guys wanting to know about the will situation, here is Brooke on Hogan's will.
I really took myself off the will because, number one, I was actually scared for myself, my family, my safety.
Who are you? Like, why would you be scared? I guess that's what people are asking. People, and forgive me, but people find it strange to hear you take it off because most people immediately go to money, right? Like, let's be realistic. I would say most of America, when they heard you removed yourself from the will, they go, why? Why would she not want the money? And I know that was not the reason for you pulling your name. But everyone's just, I think they were having a hard time wrapping their brain around why you wouldn't want to be a part of it.
First of all, there's not enough money in the world that would matter with what I felt I was facing. There were just too many people that I had solid knowledge of not being good people around my dad. And I tried to tell him, and I felt that if I created any more waves, that I would be in danger. And that's the truth. There were
all right, so there it is, guys. Out of Brooke's mouth, her reasonings for wanting to be left out the will, and that Hulk was not in with the best people. So I recommend everybody watching, if you're a wrestling fan, especially an 80s or mid to late, an 80s, 90s fan, or Hulkamaniac in general. I highly recommend everybody watching it. It was a very good documentary, but I said, of course, things are left out. You saw in the interview that there was other infidelities by Hogan and situations that were left out as well. But like I said, you can't have everything. They're not going to jump into everything in a 4 hour in a 4-hour documentary. They're just not. But hope you guys enjoy. It is a very good documentary. So I hope everybody